Have you ever had that sudden, cold sinking feeling in the pit of your stomach? A quiet, uninvited whisper in your mind telling you that something in your life is terribly, fundamentally wrong. Most of us brush it off. We tell ourselves we're being paranoid, that we're overthinking the mundane details of our everyday lives. For 8 years, I did exactly that. My name is Clara and I thought I was living the ultimate American dream in a quiet, tree-lined suburb just outside of Boston. My husband, David, was a brilliant, highly successful structural engineer whose job required him to travel constantly, auditing major construction projects across the country. He was charismatic, deeply attentive, and an incredibly loving father to our 7-year-old son, Leo. David was the kind of husband who sent flowers to my office for no reason, who never missed a single weekend soccer game, and who worked tirelessly to provide us with a beautiful, affluent lifestyle. We were the couple our friends looked up to, the gold standard of a stable, happy marriage. But looking back, the warning signs were always there, hiding in plain sight. They were tiny, easily dismissible anomalies that I constantly rationalized away. There were the late, night business calls that David would always step out onto the back deck to take, shivering in the autumn air, while whispering intensely into the receiver, only to smile warmly when he came back inside and claim it was just a high-stakes corporate negotiation. There were the banking notifications that occasionally flashed on his laptop screen from financial institutions I had never heard of, which he smoothly laughed off as complex out-of-state corporate expense accounts. And then there was his phone, a sleek, black device that was always face down, always locked, and never more than an arm's reach away from his physical body. I never questioned it. In a marriage built on trust, you don't spy on your partner. You don't doubt the person who looks you in the eyes every single day and tells you that everything they do, every long flight they take, is for the family. The illusion of my perfect life didn't crumble slowly. It shattered instantly on a suffocatingly quiet Thursday night. David had just returned from a grueling 5-day business trip to the West Coast and was dead asleep beside me, utterly exhausted. Around 2:00 a.m., his phone began to vibrate violently against the heavy wood of the nightstand. It wasn't a single text, it was an relentless, aggressive barrage of notifications that refused to stop. Plagued by a sudden, icy wave of dread that I could no longer suppress, I reached across the dark bed and picked up the device. The screen illuminated my face in the dark, displaying a series of urgent incoming messages. The contact was saved simply under a single punctuation mark, a period. But the preview text underneath it sent a physical shockwave straight through my chest. It read, "The fever isn't breaking, we are at the ER. Where are you? The kids keep asking for their dad." See, my breath caught in my throat. My heart hammered so violently against my ribs I was certain it would wake David up. The kids, their dad. Leo was fast asleep in the next room, perfectly healthy. Paralyzed by fear, I stared at David's sleeping face, suddenly feeling like I was lying next to a complete stranger. Driven by pure survival instinct, I tried to unlock the phone. I used the anniversary date, his birthday, Leo's birthday. Nothing worked. Then, with trembling fingers, I held the phone up to David's sleeping face. The facial recognition clicked. The home screen opened. And in that exact second, my entire reality, my past, my marriage, and my future vanished into thin air. What I found inside that phone wasn't just evidence of a standard, cliché affair. It was something infinitely more calculated, clinical, and terrifying. Deeply embedded within a hidden, password-protected folder disguised as a boring calculator app, I discovered a completely parallel universe. There were digital calendars color-coded with terrifying precision, detailing 2 entirely distinct lives. One color represented us, the Boston family. The other color, running simultaneously for the last 6 years, represented a completely separate household in Seattle, Washington. I scrolled through thousands of photos in absolute, horrifying silence. There was my husband, David, standing in front of a beautiful colonial home identical to ours, holding a glowing newborn baby girl. There were photos of him celebrating Christmases, blowing out birthday candles, and taking family vacations with another woman and 2 beautiful, blue-eyed children. He hadn't just cheated on me, he had systematically, meticulously built, financed, and maintained an entire second family on the other side of the country. He was splitting his weeks perfectly between 2 households, using his fictitious out-of-state corporate engineering trips as the ultimate cover story to play God with 2 completely oblivious women. The sheer mathematics of the deception was mind-bending. He had separate bank accounts, separate social media profiles under a slightly altered legal name, and even separate sets of clothing waiting for him in each city. He was a ghost, a master illusionist who managed to make both of his wives feel like the absolute center of his universe, while entirely fracturing his own soul. The woman in Seattle, whose name was Amanda, had no idea I existed. To her, David was a dedicated corporate consultant whose demanding East Coast projects required him to travel for half of every single week. I sat on the bathroom floor in the dark until the sun began to rise, the cold tiles pressing against my skin as the blinding rage slowly hardened into a frozen, unshakable resolve. 11 years of systematic psychological manipulation was not going to end in a tearful, screaming confrontation where he could smoothly lie his way out of it. He was a master manipulator, and if I confronted him alone, he would find a way to twist the narrative. No, a deception this grand required an equally grand execution. While David was downstairs playfully making pancakes for Leo the next morning, pretending to be the wholesome, doting father he always claimed to be, I quietly walked into his home office. I downloaded every single piece of digital evidence from his phone, every photo, every bank statement, every calendar event, and every text thread, and compiled it into a massive, undeniable digital file. Then, I bypassed David entirely. I found Amanda's private contact information buried in the messages, and with a heart as cold as ice, I sent her the file along with a simple, devastating messageable. "My name is Clara. I am David's wife in Boston. We need to talk," said. 2 hours later my phone rang. It was an area code from Washington. When I answered, the voice on the other end was trembling, completely breathless, and filled with the exact same suffocating grief I had experienced just hours prior. Amanda and I were two completely different women living thousands of miles apart, but in that moment, an unbreakable, shared anger bonded us together. Over the next 3 days, while David thought he was smoothly preparing for his next, routine business trip, his two wives were quietly coordinating the ultimate trap. On Monday morning, David packed his premium leather travel bags, kissed me on the cheek, hugged Leo tightly, and promised he would bring back a souvenir from his corporate meetings on the West Coast. He boarded his flight to Seattle, completely unaware that the matrix he had spent 6 years building was about to implode with catastrophic force. When David arrived at the Seattle house later that evening, he walked through the front door, dropped his luggage, and called out for Amanda and the kids. The house was dimly lit, completely silent. He walked into the main living room expecting to see his family. Instead, the lights clicked on. Sitting side by side on the sofa, looking directly at him with an icy, unblinking glare, were Amanda and myself. I had quietly flown into Seattle 3 hours before his flight landed, waiting for the final curtain call of his 11-year performance. The color instantly and entirely drained from David's face. He stumbled backward against the wall, his jaw dropping open as his brain desperately tried and failed to calculate how his two completely separate worlds were suddenly sitting in the exact same rooms. The phone slipped from his hand, shattering loudly against the hardwood floor. He tried to speak, his mouth opening and closing like a fish gasping for air, attempting to launch into another charismatic, smooth explanation, but the illusion was dead. The digital file containing every single lie he had ever told was laid out on the coffee table right in front of him. He collapsed to his knees on the rug, tears streaming down his face as the narcissistic armor completely shattered, leaving him a pathetic, sweating, begging creature. He wept, reaching out to grab our hands, sobbing that he loved us both, that he couldn't bear the thought of losing either family, and that he did it all to keep everyone provided for. But we didn't feel a single ounce of pity. We felt an overwhelming wave of absolute disgust. The legal fallout that followed that night was a swift, public execution of David's carefully constructed life. Amanda and I filed for high-conflict divorce proceedings simultaneously, entirely refusing to let his high-priced attorneys play us against each other. During the discovery phase of the trial, the darkest layer of his scheme was exposed to the public. David hadn't just been lying about his time. He had been systematically embezzling hundreds of thousands of dollars through corporate fraud from his engineering firm, just to independently finance two separate, high-end suburban households. The firm had actually flagged his accounts months prior, and his entire double life was already on the verge of collapsing under a federal investigation. Today, David is serving a lengthy federal prison sentence, trading his designer corporate suits for an orange jumpsuit. But out of the ash heap of this absolute psychological nightmare, something beautiful and defiant emerged. Amanda and I looked at our children and realized that despite the monstrous lie that brought them into existence, they are innocent, they share the same blood, and they deserve to know who they are. We chose to rise entirely above the betrayal. Today, we are close friends, co-parenting our children together, ensuring they grow up knowing each other as the true, fiercely protected siblings they are. We turned our shared survival into a sanctuary of truth, proving that the two separate worlds David spent years trying to divide ultimately united to completely, beautifully, and permanently destroy him. If your partner's phone begins to buzz incessantly in the dark kitchen late tonight, are you really sure you know what's waiting on the lock screen? Are you absolutely certain you know who's sleeping right next to you? Thank you for listening to tonight's story on A Secret Affair. If this journey into the dark side of devotion sent shivers down your spine, don't forget to hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications so you never miss an episode. Leave your thoughts in the comments below. What would you do if you opened his phone and found an entire secret life?